How do you come up with your titles? I just got to ask because you have really cool titles. So is there like they just come to you? Like, is there a method you use? I don't know. Like, what? How do you do it?
I think I'll actually probably go back to after my master's program. I joined this online writing group called I forget the name of it now, but it was a really good writing group. And there was a section of it because there's a forum and there's different sections of the writing group that just focuses upon titles and first lines, and then title, first line, the first 300 words. That's all that it was like a critique part, but it was only the opening of your story, your short story, or your novel. And I think I was on that group for probably 2 years and just kept working on really good titles, really good first lines, really good first 300 words. I think that's where it came from. Just that constant. Because we would critique each other and like say, well, this is why this is not as catchy as you may think it is, or this is why this is actually not good, or this is why this is really good. And I think I got it from there. I wish I remember the name of that group now, but I do not because it was a long time ago.
Yeah. I'm just curious because like there's so many people that I've interviewed at this point who everybody has like a different method. So I tend to like myself, I tend to have a character in mind first, somewhat, story or whatever, like a basics. And then there's always like for me, I tend to find there's like a theme or something that I tend to want to, kind of like to drive that way. Like that's how I was taught, like to do papers and stuff like that for honors English and stuff. So I think I still like tend to kind of fall back on that method a little bit. And sometimes you get good titles, but not always. So I always find it interesting to ask people because people might be like, "Oh, hey, Todd's got really good titles." So I think it's really good for people to consider things like that. So I like that you had like more of the feedback process. So I think that's a better one than I always have to send it to people now. I'm like, does this sound good? So yeah, I think feedback for that kind of stuff is really important. So that makes total sense. But that story sounds really, really interesting. It just sounds like a really interesting character. You did bring up mythology though, and it doesn't have to be about that book or that story, but I'm really curious because I took South Korea for a long time in college, and I loved the history. There were so many professors at Michigan State that um, came and would do different talks and stuff. So that was like one of the coolest things I ever got to do was learn about a lot of the different mythology from South Korea, well, just Korea in general, right? Like ancient Korea and a bunch of different places around there. So I'm curious, like, was there any mythology in particular that you thought was like, this is super awesome, but you haven't used that for a story, but maybe you might in the future?
So the how Korea started is with it's about this tiger and this bear that goes into a cave. And they want to become human, and they have to eat like mugwort and garlic in order to do so. But anyway,
Interesting.
so I think it's the tiger that becomes a human or the bear that becomes a human. But I always thought that was really interesting. And the Windshine Chronicles, it's kind of funny to say how it began, but there was a point where I wrote this story about this tiger, this group of tigers in a place called Solaksan, which is in Gangwon-do. But anyway, this is in Korea, and if they can become humans, and I used that as the kind of the first story before I wrote Hollow Man. There would be one in Blood Stew, and that those tigers that I begin with are going to come up in the fourth book that I've started writing, but haven't really gotten very far in, called The Many Faces of Horangi, because Horangi is how you say tiger in Korean. But yeah, I mean that whole idea. I mean, lycanthropes are kind of old, kind of like a well-known mythology, but I do think that this is has a more of a kind of Korean flair to a Korean aspect to it. So yeah, I mean, I am. There's actually also the tigers are also in Hollow Man. I think they're mentioned in all three books. They're just mentioned though, but in the fourth book, it's actually going to be more or less their story.